Talking with the best long stick midi in the world, Mike Ehrhardt, who's a member of the PLL's Whipsnakes. And I found out, having talked to your coach earlier today, that a Whipsnake's actually a real snake. My question for you is, in 2018, you were voted the FIL's most valuable player for a series. You'd been a close defenseman in college until your last year, which they converted you to long stick. Now, part of that was sort of changing the body and doing all the rest of it. Do you realize you're the second defensive player to ever win an MVP for a world championship?
Yeah, I learned that after the fact, and obviously it's a great honor to be in that discussion. Obviously, with Coach Petramala, I mean, he's obviously probably the best defenseman to ever play the game. So to be able to be in that same conversation as him, it's a great honor.
I asked that question because you were, for the most part, up until 2018, were a good, solid college player, but you were not in the elite of the world. And 2018, you kind of got sort of on that stage. I think your Charlotte coach, Tony Resch, was kind of sort of a conduit to get you to have that opportunity. So talk about what Tony's confidence meant in you, and what went through your change from being a great college player to now one of the best in the pros. There's a metamorphosis there, and it was more than physical.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the toughest thing coming from college into the professional ranks. Obviously, you have a great college career and plenty of accolades there and just a great teams that you're a part of. And then you get into the professional ranks and you're a nobody again. And honestly, it's the best thing. You got to prove yourself and you got to put the work in to get to the level you want to be at. And obviously, I truly think one of the hardest positions to kind of maintain after the college level is playing defense on the defensive side, just because you're not practicing every day. You're not doing footwork. You're not doing defensive drills. I mean, people start working, they start coaching. It's just less time to be able to do that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I went down to a Charlotte team. We did not have great success the first 2 years. So I was asked to do a little bit of everything. I started playing close defense for them. That's what I was drafted for. And then we were pretty bad. So I ended up playing some wings too. I would play close, go up to play wings. And then if we got the ball, I'd go back down to close. So I was doing a little bit of everything for them. And then they finally like, you know what, just stay up at LSM. There was a tough injury to Ryan Flanagan that he suffered. And then I pretty much took over the position for the team. And that's kind of where things took off. And we had great success when Coach Stagnita came in and Coach Resch. And I mean, I got to give credit to Coach Resch. I mean, he really, my career really took off when he came in. He really helped me blossom as a player and kind of understand the professional game a little better and understand what I have to do to be successful on the field. And I mean, he was a true believer in me. And I mean, the reason why I made that USA team is because of Coach Resch. I mean, he was a strong believer in my game and what I could potentially do in that tournament. And obviously it all panned out, but it's that's a credit to Coach Resch.
You lost, I think, 20, 30 pounds also. Obviously, quicker feet, you're lighter because you're what, about 6'5" anyway?
Yeah, so I was probably playing around like 235, which was pretty heavy for me. Obviously, being in college, I was probably about 210 when I was playing, and I was able to still get around and move around, but I just didn't feel as comfortable as I used to. So obviously took a lot of time to focus on my body and myself. And obviously I knew what we were going to be into going over to Israel and a lot of games, a lot of hot weather. I mean, we were playing at 9:30 at night and it was still 95 degrees out. So it was a lot of games in a short amount of time. So obviously I had to take care of our bodies and got ourselves in a good position to be successful there. And yeah, that's all credit to kind of the off the field stuff leading up to it.
Was it a major diet change?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, something I tried to do a little bit was the Whole30 diet, which is cutting out carbs and no sugar. And I mean, it's tough being an athlete cutting out sugar. It's definitely hard on the body. It kind of shocked the body, but kind of did a moderation of it. But just a lot more conscious of what I was putting in my body. And I had to realize if I wanted to be successful, I had to take care of my body. And that's something that finally realized at 25, 26 years old, that if I wanted to continue my professional career in lacrosse, that I got to put some time and money into my body. And that's really starts with the nutrition and dietary stuff.
During the pandemic, are you still disciplined enough to still be on that same diet, or do you have a pig out Wednesday or something?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I mean, obviously being home, I got out of the city in the pandemic leading up to Utah, and it was just a lot easier being able to train. I mean, we had a real good group of guys. Timmy Muller is a Whipsnake, and a Chaminade guy. He lives in Garden City. Then Matt Kavanaugh and his brother Brendan, both Chaminade Kellenberg guy, and real good buddy of mine. We all worked out together during the pandemic. I mean, all the fields were really shut down, so we all kind of honor code and took care of ourselves. And we were going up there 3-4 times a week to the field to work out and shoot, and we're all lifting. And I mean, the hardest thing, I mean, I love being home, and my mom is a great cook, so definitely some good meals. But being on my own in the city, it's a lot easier to kind of manage my diet and just cook for myself. And so it's kind of had to do that a little bit on my own and cook here and there, and then just eat dinners here and there, and just kind of pick out some things that I knew wouldn't be great for me. But yeah, I mean, we just kind of did it. I pretty much were doing like 2 a days, where I was working out in the morning and then lifting at night. So I mean, I was burning a ton of calories, so I had to put a ton back into my body, and just made sure it had to be good food.
You know, if anybody in the PLL that has, like football players, they'll actually they get paid for hitting certain weight restrictions. Do you have anybody in the PLL that's in any kind of part of their contracts like that?
No, not that I know of. I mean, look, it's the professional lacrosse is you either kind of take care of it. It's all on your own. It's really it's tough to. I mean, a lot of guys have a lot going on, but it's getting a lot more serious. We're obviously being treated a lot differently than we used to in the new league, and you really got to take care of yourself, and that's really the big thing. And I have really good understanding of my body now. I kind of feel myself when I kind of have to change things around, and that's something I hope to kind of keep in check.
Welcome back to another edition of the Michigan Lacrosse Review. We're getting a chance to talk to Whipsnake, PLL Whipsnake long stick defenseman, Mike Ehrhardt. My name is Greg Norman, your host, and we appreciate, Mike, you spending a little bit of time with us talking about lacrosse and such things related to lacrosse. And the first question I wanted to ask, it was kind of the one I wanted to ask earlier, but I'm a believer that the best player on your team has to be your long stick midi. And I say that having spent 20 years in California and knowing that we used to take the tallest kid in 8th grade, and he ended up being a quarterback recruit. And if you look at California, the kids that come out of California, all the quarterbacks seem to be 6'4", 6'5". So to me, maybe with the exception of goalie, I think long stick midi's got to be the most important player on your team. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're asked to do a little bit of everything, and we obviously have a good feel. A good LSM has a good feel of the game. They kind of understand the pace. I mean, they got to understand. They got to play great defense, be good off the ground. They got to play wings on faceoffs. They got to play defense, and they got to play a little bit of offense. I mean, that's really what makes a great LSM. And if you're able to do all that, I mean, you're going to have some good success and be a quality LSM. And the offensive stuff, I mean, look, I'm a big believer in, just going out there and look, you're going to mess up here and there, but you just really got to have an understanding of the game and a good IQ. You got to know when to push it, when to not, when to take a risk. Especially you really got to, you see some LSMs, they really only want to play offense. But I mean, defense is our first priority, and ground balls is just, I mean, that's just a personal thing. I mean, you gotta have the mindset that every ball on the ground is going to be yours. And That's just the mentality you got to have every time you go out in the field. And we have a great group of guys with the Whipsnakes that are just great off the ground with our short sticks and obviously Joe Nardella. But being an LSM, that's, I think, really the two most important things is being able to play defense and getting out and up to the offensive side of the field and then picking up ground balls.
I look at the Inside Lacrosse postseason awards for the PLL, and I don't think there's a category that doesn't have one or two Whipsnakes listed, you being among them. It's you get a pretty talented team. But one of the things I want to be able to do is kind of start back. You're a Long Island guy, started in Westbury. Now you came out of the Chaminade factory, but talk a little bit about your first time you picked up a stick. You started as a midfielder, right?
Yep. Yeah. So I obviously grew up in a small town, car place that didn't have lacrosse, and the town where Chaminade is, Mineola, is the town next to us. That's where I grew up in the PLL program there. So I grew up playing. I grew up playing with one of my best friends, John Urbank. He was another defenseman too, Chaminade guy. Ended up playing up at Georgetown. But yeah, I mean, we were really the two guys that came out of that program, and obviously had great success at Chaminade and in the collegiate level. But yeah, Chaminade, I mean, it was you obviously have legendary coach Jack Moran, and he was really one of the guys along with the rest of the coaching staff that saw me as a freshman come in, made the team pretty much as a third, fourth line midfielder. Didn't have a ton of as much as experience as some of these other guys coming in from these bigger towns, the Manhassets, the Garden Cities, the Massapequas. So they decided to give me a long pole. So that's when I switched my freshman year. Wasn't too thrilled about it at first, but you know what? I just wanted to get on the field and play, and they gave it to me. So it was fun going out there to play. Really didn't know the position too well, and then went to a bunch of camps that next summer and kind of just went out there and played. And then obviously it started to click after sophomore year. And then, yeah, I mean, it was great sophomore year. We had a great group of guys at Chaminade. I mean, a ton of guys from Rockville Center, Garden City, and Manhasset. We had a real good contingency of guys from there. And then what was it after my sophomore year is the travel lacrosse wasn't as big as it is now. I mean, there was a couple of teams on Long Island, and you had the Express. I think it was the only summer I played travel, and I played for the Express. I wasn't even on the top team. I was on the second tier team for the Express program. And then I was lucky enough to get an invite to the Jake Reed camp. I mean, that's definitely had to do with being at Chaminade. We were able to get that exposure by being able to get to that camp. And back then they really did only invite 120 of the best guys in the country. So it was a small group of guys there, and I had a great camp there. And that's where I got a lot of my looks from there, and some of the travel stuff that summer. And obviously I'm really glad the way recruiting is now. It got back to September 1st that coaches are allowed to reach out junior year. I mean, that's the way it should be. It started getting ridiculous and out of control that you had 8th graders and freshmen committing to colleges. I mean, as a junior, I still had no clue where I wanted to go to school. I mean, I didn't even know where I wanted to go to high school. There was a lot of pressure on these kids, and glad it all worked out and it's back to how it was. But I mean, that September 1 was a special day. I mean, you get a ton of emails, a ton of handwritten notes. I mean, I know a lot of things are text and FaceTime now, but it's back then. I mean, I still keep a whole book my mom made me of pretty much every coach that had reached out and all the letters and emails that I'd gotten. So it's pretty cool to look back and kind of see where my career kind of started off and kind of went forward. And obviously picking Maryland was a no-brainer. Loved College Park, and it really helped having Coach Moran's son, Ryan Moran, who's now the head coach at UMBC. Him there, he came over from Navy back to his alma mater in Maryland, and kind of that was the final ceiling point for me for committing there.
Was lacrosse in your family because it's Long Island, or was it because Dad had played, or anything along those lines?
Yes. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish.
I was going to say, we always talk about Long Island attacks. That's just been one of those regionalisms that, you know, if you're a college coach outside of New York, you want to find yourself a Long Island attack. But it turns out that Long Island produces an awful lot of defensemen. And if you're playing against the best attacks in the world, it would only make sense that they would, produce some pretty good defensemen. So Was it at home, or was it just because it was a sport you picked up in high school?
Yeah, so actually, my two cousins showed me the sport. They were from Car Place too, and they went to Kellenberg, was the other sister school of Chaminade. They ended up playing there, and they pretty much they showed me the game. They were hockey players, so obviously lacrosse translated for them, and they had picked the sport up at a young age too, and were pretty successful at it as well. And so they showed me the sport, and coincidentally enough, my dad didn't. He had really no clue what lacrosse was. He grew up in Queens, and he was a football player. He had a really successul football career. I mean, he started at CW Post, and then he went up to URI, Rhode Island, and he was his number retired up there as a quarterback, and he ended up playing for the Bengals and the Jets for a little bit too. So he was a football guy. So obviously he was a big fan of me playing football. And I mean, his rule when we were younger was we weren't allowed to play tackle football until 7th grade. He wanted to wait till our bodies developed. So obviously I played 3 sports in high school. I played basketball for 2 years and then played football and lacrosse. But yeah, I mean, pretty much that's all credit to my cousins for showing me the sport. My 2 cousins, Bobby and Kevin.
From a concussion standpoint, Dad's pretty smart.
Yeah. I mean, he's seen it all, so at all levels. So that was one of his big rules. And I played for the middle school at Car Place and played quarterback there. And then when I went over to Shaman, I played receiver and safety there. So,
and with what I'm guessing is probably being one of the bigger guys in the classes and the grades that you were involved in, football coaches, and especially at the early days, probably want, they want those big tight ends or those big tackles in those days. So I'm sure there was even more pressure on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, when I got the Shaman, I was really shy. I wasn't as confident as I was because, I mean, obviously coming from a really small town on Long Island, haven't really been had much experience playing against these other kids on Long Island. I took kind of a little back seat, which is something I regret to these days. But I kind of came out of that shell as I got a little bit older, but I kind of lucked out, was able to play receiver and safety there. And I was probably about 6'1" when I went into school, 6 foot, 6'1", and maybe $160. And then obviously as I got older and a little bit bigger, I put weight on. But I think when I graduated, I was probably about 6'3", 6'4", I'm probably 6'4", like 180. So I didn't really put weight on until I got to Maryland, but it was I mean, we had a great football group there. I mean, to be honest, like football was, I loved that the most when I was in high school. I mean, we had a really good group of guys, and we were kind of in the middle of the pack of the Catholic League, and there was pretty good football in the Catholic League. So we had a good time playing football as well. 2010,
you head off to Maryland. They ended up in the Big Ten. Were they in the Big Ten when you were there? I think they were. Yeah. No? Still?
Nah, I was lucky. It was the last year, my senior year, that was ACC.
Okay. Would you like to play? Well, I guess the ACC is certainly every bit as good as the Big Ten is. I don't think that's a discussion. That's a pretty easy one. But they started to build success in the time you were there. You made it to the semis, I think, in 2014.
Yeah, so we lost first year of Coach Silver my freshman year. We came in and we lost the national championship to UVA. That year was a memorable one. I mean, we had a senior class that was 17 guys in it, a bunch of 5th-year seniors, and that senior class was a memorable one with Ryan Young and Travis Reed and Brian Farrell and those guys. So we ended up losing to Virginia 9-7 in that national championship game, and then lost a ton of guys. That sophomore year was my first year starting, kind of brand new team, kind of left over of a few guys. And we kind of up and down season, kind of limped into the playoffs and getting crushed by Colgate, one of the last games of the year up there. And we lost to UMBC that year too. And we got in unseeded, and we had to go up to Lehigh to play. Kind of snuck out a win, and then we kind of went on a little bit of a run there and made it to the national championship game, but obviously fell to a really hot and good Loyola team in the 2012 national championship.
Was Will Yateman at Maryland when you were there?
So he was a 5th-year football player when I was there, But yeah, Will's a great friend. Obviously, I see him a lot in New York City, and he's a heck of a player.
Will's dad was pretty much instrumental in getting lacrosse started in the early '80s in San Diego, and I was one of the 4, 5, or 6 guys that was kind of pulled in because I had a box background. In fact, the joke I use on the show is that somebody said, "Hey, we're going to start lacrosse. Can you give us a hand?" And I asked them where the rink was, and they, didn't go. But at that time, if I'm not mistaken, Maryland had 6'6", 6'6", and 6'5" on their attack side. Maybe the biggest attack that's ever been put together, the biggest I ever saw.
Yeah, it was a big media attack. I mean, they Grant Catalino, Will Yateman, and Ryan Young was about 6 foot too, but he was it was a heck of a group. I mean, you guys pray for some of those defensemen who had to cover them.
I'm not sure how you cover somebody 6'6", but you had great success. Obviously, you're a 2-time All-American, second team 13, first team in 14. So you weren't exactly an unknown commodity coming out of Maryland, and it was a great place to play. I'm assuming the ACC was a good conference, so you had that opportunity. So you've got a finance background, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So you were
real estate. I'm in real estate now.
So First Nationwide you're not a part of that anymore?
Yeah, no, I'm still there. So that's an insurance group on the real estate side. So we cover title insurance. So we work with all the real estate.
What's your undergraduate from Maryland?
I was a communications major there. So
how did finance sneak in?
I don't know. Just kind of, I interned for 2 summers in the city in the bond market. Worked for a group that had an electronic trading platform, and then kind of realized that wasn't really what I wanted to do, and kind of decided to either go the finance route or have a little bit of a real estate background, and real estate really interested me, and that was my first opportunity to kind of crack into the industry, and I've been there ever since. So it's been a great run, and love real estate. Dabble with it on the side a little bit myself, and obviously doing the insurance stuff. I mean, it's a big relationship business. I mean, it's a lot of lacrosse guys in it, a lot of athletes. So it's definitely a good business to be in.
I would think the lure of dollars in the real estate market in New York would be an equivalent to wanting to play in the PLL, although I'm assuming that the money in the PLL isn't what you could make being real estate, but it's at least when you were in college, what did you think you wanted to do if you weren't playing lacrosse?
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest question. I mean, I had no clue what I wanted to do. And then obviously the best advice I got was, hey, just get your degree in college, and you'll figure out what you want to do after. I mean, you're young enough. You could take your whole 20s to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life, and you could jump industries and go back and forth. And look, I mean, the world that we live in, it's really a big relationship business in anything you do. So obviously I got great advice from a lot of great guys in the lacrosse world, and just from friends and family at home. And that's kind of the route I took. And it was, I mean, you got to make the most of your opportunities too. I mean, nothing's going to be handed to you. You got to really put the work in. And a lot of that translates back to the lacrosse world, and being able to do both. I mean, look, after the 2018 games, I was considering retiring and focus on work full time. And then the PLL came around. So that's kind of, it was a breath of fresh air, and everyone was kind of, it was stagnant and tired of the MLL. I mean, it really wasn't worth it from what we were getting paid, and kind of what we were putting ourselves through each week, trying to play those games. And obviously the top goal was to make the USA team. And obviously we did that. We won the tournament, and then the PLL came around, and that's kind of it's been great for the lacrosse world. So it's what we've needed.
Have you thought about the idea of not being converted as a senior and playing close defense? Do you think you'd still be sitting in the same chair if you were still playing close defense?
I truly don't know. And I think about that a lot, actually. And it's just a matter of, I mean, a lot of things could have went different ways. And I mean, I don't know if I'd be in the position I am today if that didn't happen. And obviously everything happens for a reason, as everyone says. And kind of just, I mean, look, a lot of stuff's all luck. I mean, someone gets injured, you get an opportunity to play, and you just have to take advantage of it. And I feel like moving my senior year after coming off an All-American season was something that I was a little hesitant at first, but my mentality was, I mean, as a team captain, I was like, you know what, I'll do anything to help the team. And we had a big hole to fill at the LSM position, and it's a very valuable position, especially in college. And ended up kind of having to learn the business, and it was great help having Jesse Bernhardt. He's one of my best friends, and he kind of really helped me through it, and someone I've looked up to my whole career and still do. And he came back in January, and I was just coming off surgery that summer on my shoulder, so I'd missed all fall ball. So he kind of really helped me understand the position and get back into shape and be able to have a successful senior year playing that position. So credit to him.
Who had the conversation with you to decide to go from close to LSM? Was it the head coach?
Yeah. So they kind of came in, and Coach Connery was there too, and Coach Moran. They kind of had it as a staff, and they said, "Hey, what are your thoughts on playing LSM?" We really did not have anyone else that could play the position. I mean, I never saw myself being able to play that position either. I was just a close guy my whole career. But it ended up working out, and it was kind of an interesting decision. I wasn't, obviously, I was a little hesitant at first, as I said, but it all worked out, and I'm glad it did.
I asked the question because I kind of went back through YouTube and watched you a little bit as 2010, 11, and then watched a little bit of some Maryland in 14. You really weren't an aggressive, close guy. You played close the way it's supposed to be played.
Yeah.
And what you've become, and what we know you as now is this unbelievably talented, sort of open field long stick that doesn't have a problem firing the ball and shooting. And it's sort of watching this metamorphosis grow. It's been really kind of fun because I think you've honestly had a great effect on the way the position's played. I'm not sure that anybody played it before you quite the same way. And
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just think it's terrific because for me, it's easy to convert a midfielder who might be talented and put a shorter stick. And so my other question is twofold. Do you see that evolution that sort of started with you? And maybe you can comment that there's guys around you that sort of helped you along. But then the second part of that is from the younger kids, even in high school, I cut my LSM stick down by 5 or 6 inches. So it's just a little easier to handle because I want them to be more offensive. And I just wonder if you could speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, I really truly believe that the position has evolved throughout the years. And obviously being in Maryland, you play within the system. I mean, you truly learn the fundamentals of defense being at Maryland. And that's something that I still preach to these days and that I'm thankful for. And I mean, you'll see it in my game. You'll see it in all the other Maryland guys, especially at the Whipsnakes. You see it in their game. Just the fundamentals of stick out in front, approaching the right way, playing good positional defense. And look, it's not sexy, but it gets the job done. And that's what we're truly there to do. I mean, you're there to stop the ball and either get a turnover. You're not really going to see us take the ball away, but I truly do think the sport has evolved and the position has evolved too. And I'm thankful. And that goes back to Coach Warren, who's the head coach at Georgetown. He truly instilled all the positional stuff. And then obviously Coach Connery came in and did the same thing. So they're two great defensive-minded coaches, and they did a lot for my career and to learn the position and really kind of take that the positional game of playing close and brought it up top. And then it also kind of tapped into my athleticism, which I didn't really be able to kind of have show out my abilities. And being in the open field, there's a lot more to do. I mean, I've always run, and that's something that I feel like I hadn't been able to do in years, playing down close. So being able to kind of get out in the open field and run around a little bit more and make plays, I mean, that really fits to my abilities, and that's something that I'm glad we were able to tap into. But yeah, I mean, I truly think that I mean, there's a number of guys that kind of really helped evolve the position. I mean, going back to Kyle Sweeney, and then you also, I mean, Joel White, I think was, I mean, he'll go down as one of the best LSMs ever to do it. And obviously, he was a midi top recruit coming to Syracuse, and they gave him a pole. But I mean, he really revolutionized in my era the position, and it's someone that I've really tried to take bits and pieces of his game, try to get him into my game too. And he's someone obviously I look up to and is a dear friend. And I was able to play alongside of him in the USA games and the World Games. And I mean, he's just a heck of a player. I mean, the ball just goes right to his stick whenever it's on the ground. And great stick on the defensive side, plays great defense, plays offense. So, I mean, if there's someone that I resemble my game or try to, it's definitely Joel White.
Watching a long pole come down and shoot is frightening for a goalie, but I think it's great for the sport. And it turns out that in doing some research to talk to you, it turns out the number one YouTube clip of all time is CJ Costabile's face-off win against when he was playing for Duke against Notre Dame. And in, I think, 7 seconds or 5 seconds going down and ripping it over Scott's shoulder. And if you watch it, it's certainly – I remember watching it. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so it was hard to watch. But an LSM on a face-off to win a national championship doesn't exactly hurt the public relations for the position, because I think that's one of those things that kind of happens. But you kind of agree that maybe for younger kids and maybe some for high school kids, maybe sometimes even shorter poles?
Definitely. Definitely a big fan and believer of that. And you have to get comfortable with having the pole in your hands and being able to play the position the right way, even on the close side and the LSM side. I mean, there's so much you can do with your stick, and it's tough to see some of these younger kids with the 6-foot pole trying to run around. Sometimes it weighs them and tips them forward and kind of takes them out of being a good positional defenseman. But I mean, I truly believe, like when I work with younger kids and even high school kids and college kids, we do a lot of stuff without our sticks. So we really work on our feet, and that's something that we did at Maryland, where they'd say, throw your sticks to the side. We're doing one-on-ones, and you just had to stay in front of them with your feet. So whether you have a short stick in your hand, I truly believe that's the best way to learn how to play defense. And then you throw the pole in their hands, and it becomes a lot easier when you're covering them. So it kind of just makes your focus not stick first, but your feet first, and playing defense with your body and your feet.
I have a bag of mini sticks, so if we have bad film sessions on Tuesday after a game on Monday, my defenseman will have to play the first part of practice with mini sticks. But the other thing is that we've cut down our LSM probably 6 to 8 inches, and the program buys the stick so that there's no cost. Mm-hmm. And I had yet to have one of the long sticks come back and go, I don't like that. I really, because it just makes it gives them the advantage on the ground, but it also gives them the advantage to be a little quicker with making passes. And in high school kids, especially where we are, don't have the skills that some of the kids that may in other areas might have. So it's just more manageable. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's something that I picked up as I kind of got a little bit older and a little more experience playing the LSM position. It's obviously I choke up a decent amount on my stick now when I come over to the offensive side, and I used to not. I didn't know really how to play, but that's something I learned from Scott Ratliff and Joel White and some of those guys, just kind of seeing how they play on the offensive side. And I mean, at first my game, I mean, it's really just kind of came down, shot the ball, but trying to get a little more involved in the offense and pick play and cutting and trying to get the assist total up and get more guys involved. As I get more attention coming out, it's more of moving the ball on, and obviously it's a team sport. You rather have the ball in the back of the net. Doesn't matter who scores, just the ball in the back of the net.
You were 7th overall to pick by Charlotte. You had 5 great years in Charlotte in making an ML All-Star team in, I think, 2016. My question, before we get to the PLL stuff, how come there's no box on this? Is that just not something that interested you?
Yeah, I mean, probably after the World Games was when I was getting a ton of interest. I had about 6 teams reach out in regards to trying to come play. And I mean, it's something I thought about for a little bit, but I mean, at first I didn't really see myself as a box guy. They all believed that my game was really going to translate over. I personally wouldn't have had enough time to do both, indoor and outdoor, and work a full-time job. So that was ultimately my final decision of not playing indoor. And obviously there's a Long Island, New York team now, but it was going to be a lot on my body, and it was kind of better off that I didn't.
Does size have any factor in that? Because most of the guys playing box are smaller and shorter than you.
Yeah, I mean, I think they kind of saw me as a defenseman or a transition guy, being able to get up and down the field. And obviously, I personally, I feel more comfortable playing offense with a long pole than a short stick these days.
Really?
But it's definitely, I'd pick a long pole playing offense than a short stick any day.
I'm sure if you went on the rink with that long pole, though, there'd be a referee saying something with the whistle. So you had this great career in Charlotte. You're kind of balancing between employment and, playing pro lacrosse. And then Mike or Paul, I'm not sure who called you, but along comes the traveling circus. Those are my words. I think they've revolutionized lacrosse. I think they've given us a chance. And I think the other thing that they've done is I think that there needs to be at some point between the World Games, the college game, the USL game, I think at some point there needs to be a set of rules that everybody plays under the same umbrella. And I think the PLL with a 10-foot shorter field, I think they've developed some things that I think will eventually become our game. And what got you interested in the PLL? Because that's where your notoriety and sort of the celebrity came for you.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely kind of took off, and it really all starts with the social media presence and being able to get our personalities and who we are as people truly out there. And I mean, that's just the day and age we are in. And it's just everything evolves around social media and TV. So it was a matter of getting a good TV contract for us. Obviously, NBC has been a great partner, and they looking at games from ESPN to NBC, I mean, you truly feel if you're sitting on the couch that you're there in the stadium or you're on the field watching the game with all the different camera angles. And Boyle just does a great job kind of announcing the game and making the viewers understand everything that's going on. And obviously we had Brendan Burke, who is a hockey guy and called the game like hockey. And I think that was a huge thing that people don't realize, that you kind of, no knock to some of these old announcers, but I mean, they really kind of just talked about storylines and players. They didn't really focus on the game, and I think that was tough for the audience to engage. And I just think they've done a great job being able to broadcast the game very well. And obviously, like I said, NBC has been extremely happy, and they're a great partner to have. And then the social media. I mean, the social media team's great at the PLL. They do so many unique and cool things on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want to call it, where they engage all the different audience, the older audience, the younger audience. So that really kind of helps get the spotlight on the players and for the fans to truly understand the personalities and who these players are.
Growing up in New York, you're either a Giants fan or you're not. You're either a Jets fan or you're not. And my point to that, back to the PLL, is that there has been some conversation, whether it's a blog or just discussion, the city loyalty that the PLL doesn't have. In other words, you play in Denver, you play in Long Island. Do you see it ever getting back to not being the traveling circus and back to where you might play for Chicago or New York or Detroit or wherever it might be?
Yeah, I mean, the big issue with lacrosse right now is that it's still growing. I mean, you still go to parts of the country that people still don't even know what lacrosse is. And obviously having the game broadcasted on NBC is getting into more households, and the social media presence is getting it in front of more people. But until pretty much everyone knows, and it's getting a lot more popular throughout the world too. But I still think we're 5-6 years down the road. And then, I mean, I'm sure eventually you're going to want to get into specific cities and kind of change the model a little bit. But I think this was this was the smartest move. And for lacrosse to kind of take off and be more successful, we had to travel around to different cities and bring it there. And look, I mean, fans could have their allegiance to certain teams, and that's kind of how they geared some of these teams to kind of help them off the get-go. I mean, obviously our team's predominantly Maryland guys, and we have a great crew of other guys who are part of it. And then I mean, you look at the Redwoods, there's a lot of Notre Dame guys, and obviously the Chrome are a bunch of the Rochester. You got the Duke, a bunch of Duke guys on that team. So it was great for the initial start and kind of give some storylines behind the teams. And look, I mean, I never thought I'd be able to play with some of these guys ever again, and they gave us this opportunity. And I mean, it's been awesome. I'm sure the league regrets putting us all together, but it's been a great 2 years.
Everybody that knows you tells me that you're a really humble guy, and you can see that from this conversation, and I appreciate that. But I want to ask this question. Do you recognize that you're one of the best 3 or 4 players in the world? And my point to that is, does that diminish the statement? Because if you were the best 2 or 3 or 4 football players in the world, you'd have a different notoriety. And I mean, I guess my question is, do you recognize that you're one of the top 4 or 5, 3 or 4 or 5 guys in the world that play the game?
I mean,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like going out there, that's just a mentality you have to have when you step foot on the field. And look, I'm not a huge social media guy, and I usually don't like talking about myself. But when you're out there on the field, you have to have that mindset that you're the best player on the field, and that any ball that's on the ground is going to be mine, or anyone that's coming at you, you're going to stop. Or when you cross the field on the offensive side, you're going to get that attention. And if you don't, then you're going to take advantage of it and either dish the ball out or go to score. And I mean, it's definitely something over the years. Like the accolades are great. I mean, I'm not going to lie. They definitely, it's definitely nice to get recognized for your hard work off the field and for your play. But I mean, I'll take a championship any day of the week. And that's something that it's been a great three summers. The last 3 summers have been great. And hopefully we can kind of keep that train going.
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. It was a question in talking earlier today with Coach Dagnita. We talked a little bit about celebrity, and he said prior to the PLL, he could walk in Baltimore, go to a restaurant, it was no big deal. Then all of a sudden he's the PLL guy, and now people are coming up and asking for autographs. And I asked him really if he was comfortable with celebrity. And I think in other sports, if you're that good in football, basketball, maybe even baseball, you probably had some celebrity even back to high school. Now all of a sudden the celebrity hits you. In Jim's case, it hits you in your late 50s and 60s. In your case, you're coming through a sport. Nothing against it, but I'm sure the Maryland basketball players got a lot more notoriety on campus than you did. Yeah. And football players, and I'm sure that's true at every place. So I'm not asking you to embarrass you. I find that the cool part of the PLL is that the celebrity that it brings, as you're mentioning, social media, those kind of things, is a different place. And it's going to take some time for guys to get used to the idea that somebody like me says, hey, by the way, you're the 3rd or 4th best player in the world. And I find it really cool that the guys I've mentioned it to, Jeff Snyder and you and Dan, Rob Pennell, they don't act like just regular guys. And I think that was my point.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely, example this summer, Rob's a really good buddy of mine, and we were golfing, and we had a kid that came up to us. I mean, probably more for Rob, but he obviously knew who we were, asked for autographs, asked for a picture, and knew both of us who we were. So, I mean, that stuff's really cool. I mean, it's also cool to see kids running around in other players' jerseys. I mean, you get in all these videos of kids getting jerseys for Christmas and for the holidays. And I mean, it's really cool stuff to see. And that's so the good thing about social media, which brings everything to light. I mean, you truly get to understand. And for us, look, I'm more sheltered and I got to get out of my shell a little bit more to do that stuff and to people to truly know who we are. But I mean, that stuff's really cool. And that stuff really hits home. And I mean, that's one of the really good things that the PLL does for the players.
In interviewing Rob earlier, he mentioned to me having a name like Greg Norman, who's a very famous golfer, if there was any correlation. I said, yeah, he's blonde, rich, and famous, and I'm not. So So my question back to you, which is just a personal one. Rob mentioned he's about a 3 or 4 handicap because he played in high school. Is he as good as he says?
He's pretty good. He's very good. So I mean, he's fun to play with too, and he kind of just he's very good. He goes out there, has a good time, and but yeah, I've gotten to really know Rob the past 3 years since the World Games, and I mean, he's been a really good friend of mine, and obviously that's a tough thing. I mean, he was really the face of the game, and look, I mean, he was probably one of 3 or 4 guys that had that social media presence before any of this really took off. So, I mean, like anything, like you definitely get your crap here and there for certain things, but I mean, you truly get it, and that's tough. I mean, the social media stuff's great, and some of these guys have different personas on social media than in real person, and that's the hard thing to really understand some of these people, and that's the thing with the social media. You just have to be authentic and be yourself, and not be someone that you're not. And Rob's just he's a great guy off the field, and that's just a credit to him.
How long do you think you can sustain this career? How long do you want to sustain this career? You're what, 27, 28?
I'm 28 now. I'll be 29 in January. So, I mean, I told myself I would love to do another World Games. I know that's got pushed to 2023. So I'll probably be about 31, going on 32 at that point. And that's I'm not giving myself a deadline of my playing career, but I'd love to be able to play another 3 seasons at least, and hopefully make another USA team for those World Games in LA, and kind of see where it goes after that. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to have to think about work full time, and obviously see where lacrosse is at that point too. And so, I mean, a lot can happen in 3 years, but hopefully I'm definitely planning on playing at least another 3 years.
Yeah. Well, listen, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to interview with us and just to have a conversation. The humbleness that you bring to the table is noted by both the guys you play with and just people who talk with you. So you're certainly a credit to the game. And mom and dad must have did something right. I mean, did something very right. So that's the cool part. So again, best of luck with what's next, and appreciate your time.
Awesome. Really appreciate it, Greg.